Hey girl, you doing this?
Hey, good. Yes, good to see you. Good to see you.
Oh, come on. After that, I think a very enriching launch, and that really restored my soul. And to
Oh,
see that, because having been in the media for 40 years and seeing what is done for other productions, and then the scrapsies that Black or other community productions get, it really restored my soul. So let's kick it off, girl. I'm joined
good.
today by Leslie Norville, who is an Emmy Award winning producer whose passion for telling stories of Black women and Black communities had led her to this space right now. Black Life Untold Stories. My girl, my girl, my girl. Why this production and why now? How did you get here?
hmm Well, I guess, for me, it's really been something that I've wanted to do for a long while. As somebody who grew up in Canada, and, at a time when people were like, where are you really from? I would get those questions all the time. And I think this is, for me, an opportunity to kind of really acknowledge my experience, the experiences of my family, my friends, and other people that look like me to say that we are here, we belong here, and we have been here. So that was really kind of the impetus to kind of jump into this big project. But also, I think now, I think there's just really, it's unfortunate that, there wasn't a series 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but I think now there's definitely more of an appetite for people to hear other stories about Canada and about Black people. So I think this was just a kind of symbiotic moment where when we pitched the idea to CBC in 2019, they were like, yes, let's do it.
Great. I'm glad that you added that part that you pitched it and as opposed to the other way around. I was sitting in the screening and of course I read credits. I recognize many names on the production. You had the opportunity to assemble a huge group of experts, right? The talking heads on the dock, but behind the scenes, just the very best throughout. And the production team is also star studded. I had the feeling of being a little girl and watching awards. I can't even remember the awards, but it was the time when Roots was winning all sorts of awards and they brought everybody on stage. And that's an image that's stuck in my mind. And I felt that this production was to a degree comparatively our roots because of all of the people behind the scenes and in front of. How did you choose the various directors? And even more importantly, 400 years of Black history, and we have a sense of expertise walking around Black in Canada. But how did you do it in such a way so that it was truly national?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, so the directors, we did an extensive and exhaustive search, and it was really, really amazing to kind of like put together. We really had like a spreadsheet of like all of the Black directors working in Canada, and we basically went and met with as many as we could, watched as many of their works as we could, and really just tried to meet and engage with so many of the amazing Black creative talent that we had here. And then through that process, we were able to kind of find our eight directors that we work with. In terms of, you know, finding, the experts in our and the really great voices that we include in the series, that again was amazing story producers that did extensive research. I think it's unfortunate that people don't know, and not as many people know, that there have been academics doing this work going unheralded for years. And so this was an opportunity to give them a platform and an opportunity to share their knowledge, their knowledges. Yeah, I think it was all just like a process of research and really trying to kind of figure out how best to have a balance in the storytelling. And again, I have to give all props to our amazing story producers who took like many months to dive into the histories and kind of pull out some of just a few, because there's, we're not telling the entire story, which we could never do, of the Black experience, our Black experiences in Canada. But they were able, through that research, to kind of find those voices and find those experts to tell us and take us on a really kind of cross Canada journey.
Congratulations, because for me as a creative in film,
Mhm.
I come to Toronto to be fed and to see people who look and sound like me and to be able to talk in certain ways because it's only percolating now in Montreal in some ways. But it was important to see myself, and so the national representation. And what I also realized is that I learned about stuff here in Montreal. I want to ask you, because we knew the stories, the schools didn't teach us, we all had a sense of, but we're still always so much more to learn. What was surprising to you, and what did you learn on this production? What surprised you, and you went, wow.
I think that was like a daily occurrence. Unfortunately, most of this history was unknown to me.
Mhm,
I obviously, like, there were things like Angelique and the story of the Black loyalists, those things, and I knew that slavery existed here. Um, but as you were mentioning, in Montreal, I had no idea that there was a Congress of Black Writers
mhm,
that happened in Montreal. So you hear about, the civil rights movement in the United States, and Black liberation movements and anti-colonial movements in Africa and in the Caribbean. But there's a piece that's missing to that hemispheric story. And that's the piece that was happening in places like Montreal and Halifax. So for me, as someone who thinks that they're like well read and knows, like, knows a broad swath of like of the Pan-African movements that were going on, that was really shocking to me, that was, Montreal was a hotbed of, Black radical thinking, and people
mhm.
were coming there to kind of meet and discuss. So that, I think, was one of the big stories that had me go, wow.
The it's a double-edged sword when you start telling stories because there are these stories, we come from an oral tradition, and then when you use today's media, you always are going to find people. But what about this? What about this? How do you want audiences to engage with this eight-part series? And I'm going to tie that to I saw like I read the press kit because that's who I am. And I saw impact strategy and I went, ooh, because these are things I've wanted to see happen around, our stories and who we are as a people. So, how do you want people to engage with the stories? And is there parts of the impact strategy where, after we've seen all eight, where we can get together? Are we doing that on social media? Are there conferences planned? I'm greedy. I can't help it.
Great question, Pat. Well, so what I would love for people to kind of engage, I would like people to engage with the material, is to one, just have an understanding that this again is a
Hmm.
small sliver, and so once you're finished watching the series, that you go out and you read David Austin's book. You
Hmm.
go out and you find, work by Ronaldo Walcott. You go out and like read work by Annette Henry. There's, so much work that has been done. And I think it's important that, this is just a starting point for conversation, for learning. So that I think for me, when you're engaging with material, know that there's still more for work for you to do, more books for you to read, more films for you to watch, and I just hope like people engage in a way that they get excited by what they're seeing and want to learn more. And then in terms of our the impact, so one thing that was really, really important because, 10-year-old, 11-year-old me, I would have loved to learn about this in school. And so a big part of our impact campaign are making educational resources available to teachers. And through our partnerships with our impact funders, we'll be making educational materials available. So reading study guides that will go along with the series. And teachers will be able to get access to the series to share with their students. We will also be carrying out screening and community screenings
Hmm.
in the new year, in 2024. And we will have invite the community to come and sit and watch the film and then have conversations afterwards to do that, to connect, kind of like just connect with each other, talk about the stories, feel like be in community with one another, and hopefully strategize on what's next. So yeah, we're really hoping that people don't just watch the series, but there's some more things that they can do
So it's not
afterwards.
like popcorn versus cotton candy, where cotton candy, eat it's gone. At least
Mhm.
popcorn is a little bit more substantive.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, could this have been done feature film?
absolutely not.
But I'm going to speak to
Absolutely not.
documentary because,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get it, you get it,
yeah.
but, some people, because they've been fed a diet of celebrity fare and Hollywood fare, and I'm not knocking any particular genre, but there's just something about documentary. What keeps you in the field of documentary, and speak to your response why this could not have been a feature film.
Yeah. So for me, documentary it's a way in to a world, to people's lives. And I think it's a more honest way to kind of understand people's experience, whether you've lived that experience or not. I think it's a more truthful way to go about it, even though again, it's everything is subjective. We the show is not an exception. We obviously have an idea and a framework in which we are telling these stories. But I think, we're hearing from people as opposed to like telling telling stories in a way that is where we're looking at, okay, for me, feature films, you're looking at many other things like, okay, is this going to make money back? Is this going to be a blockbuster hit? And so when you do that, there's compromises that you have to make in terms of storytelling. And so, of course, there are really great examples of feature films that go into the Black experience, obviously. But I think when we're talking about history, in this way, I rather hear from a Lois Patterson who came over here in the late 1950s as a part of the domestic scheme. I
Mhm.
don't Her story is dramatic. Her story is fascinating. Her story is interesting. I don't for me, need to see a dramatization of that. Not to say that there isn't space for that. Of course there is. But for me, as a documentarian, I think, I rather hear from her, and to hear her story, as opposed to someone who's trying to kind of like figure out how to, make this more dramatic or more salacious or so. Yeah, there's definitely spaces for that again, but yeah, I will always beat the drum for a documentary.
Having worked in the field of Black arts and cultural living, uh, I'm often saddened by the fact that we do this work, and too many times it is preaching to the choir.
Mm.
What is your hopes for all communities that make up Canada watching this? Because it, for sure, I get the sense watching it, it is made by Black people for Black people, but for everybody. How do we get the everybody to buy into understanding that these stories matter, they're interesting, and it includes them. They're part of the picture. When the last statistic I saw, only 12% of Canadians actually know their history.
Mhm.
Speak to me about, or speak directly, because I actually do have lots of white and everybody else listeners.
Yes. Well, this was made, obviously the bulk of the people who worked on this show were Black Canadians, and it was made by us. But this is really the reason why we, partnered with CBC, is that this is Black history, but it's also Canadian history. And I think if we're going to engage and have a dialogue and really move forward as a country, we need to kind of understand and acknowledge the real history, because we've told ourselves a lie, quite frankly, about who we are as Canadians. And I think the only way for us to move forward and create a Canada that we create the Canada that we say we are, we need to be able to acknowledge and understand that history in a real way. And I think, this series, again, even though it was made by Black people for Black people, it's really, really great television. It's
Mhm.
entertaining, it's engaging. And so anybody who loves documentary, anybody who loves cinema, this is made for you as well. We are all filmmakers who worked on this. So we tried to create something that was engaging and not something that, you would have watched in your class in, grade 6 or 7. This is not medicine. This is definitely educational. It's educational, but it's definitely entertaining.
I want to thank you. Thank you. The sleepless nights, the worrying, decision making, some of the creative tensions, or something this good had to have had some creative tensions. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. But thank you, because I feel on the 18th, which on CBC Gem is where it will have its online premiere, and then the broadcast premiere on the 25th. I feel that there is something happening. I almost want to say, I hope we're going to be on, I don't even know where people go anywhere. Are we going to watch it together on Facebook or Twitter? So like how we used to watch Scandal and type and speak to each other. Because I do seriously think, in terms of the narratives that is to come, that is coming, and future narratives, that this is a watershed moment in Black media making. And so congratulations for having the haha moment to create it, to stick with it, and here we are. And of course, connect with us, continue to connect with us, and keep us up to date on the information. Don't go back to Let's only talk to Tirana. Remember us
Yeah,
brothers and sisters out here. And
for
also, when do you think we might be able to share it on an international audience? Because oftentimes when we have something here, it's geo-blocked.
Mhm.
And I've posted things before, and then the brothers and sisters and everybody else outside of Canada. Now, I know rights because you want to sell to different markets and all of that, but will there be a moment where it could be just on block for 24 hours? And
Yeah, I mean, that I don't know, but we're definitely trying to make it available in the United States and in the UK, in France. So we're looking at ways because, again, these are conversations that we all should be having together. And I love that idea of like having viewing parties. That would be really cool. So yeah, that is our hope, that is our goal, to kind of make it more widely available outside of Canada. Just
48 hours, I beg. Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. A joy
thanks,
talking to you.
yes,
And for sure, this is just the beginning because I see this is going to play over and over and over again. So thank you.
thank you. Great talking to you.
Okay.